What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's TV review of the Apple TV Plus original series, The Afterparty Season 2. And this, of course, will look at Episode 4, which is entitled Hannah, which is directed by Valia. So at this point, I can definitely say that The Afterparty Season 2, unless it really drops the ball, will actually be better than the first season, which is pretty remarkable for a second season because that just doesn't happen. Most second seasons are actually a lot worse than the first season just because they have to still find their footing. Things just don't fall. They fall by the wayside. They just don't work. But this season is absolutely tremendous so far. It's creative. It's endearing. It has a lot of great characters. And as much as I like the first season, the mystery here is just much more interesting and provocative. And this episode is no different. You know, this episode, which is a Wes Anderson parody in a lot of respects, is fantastic. I'm not a huge Wes Anderson fan, but I get his style and I understand it. And I think it's very creative. And with that said, you know, this is an episode that deals with Hannah's character, you know, the stepsister to Edgar. Of course, this is Anna Konkle, who is playing the character of Hannah, who, of course, was on Pen 15. And she's absolutely wonderful in this episode. This actually allows her character, who's very weird and very offbeat and very strange, to really shine in her episode. Like episode last week with Travis, it's just an episode that really takes the idea of using a Wes Anderson style world and allowing Hannah's character to be really developed and really creative and really unique, to allow her to express herself in the way she only knows possible, which is just that very, you know, she's almost like introverted, but she also has this kind of weird aura about her, and she is being, you know, in this world where she just feels like an outcast. And then when she comes across, you know, having a stepbrother who's this like entrepreneur who's very weird, it allows her to express herself. And then on top of everything, what makes this episode so great is it brings into the theories of what I had from the first episode, which there is much more to Grace, or much more to Hannah and Grace as originally seen from the surface level. And I find that really fantastic. I find the episode really fantastic. It's another 9.5 out of 10, I'm going to be fairly honest, because it really delivers on the persona and the plot devices and the world that, you know, that the Afterparty is creating. And using the Wes Anderson like archetype and stuff like that, it allows this world to be fully unique. And each episode that progresses really shows that. And it showed that last season, but it really shows it here. But it also allows certain pieces and parts of this movie, the puzzle of this chessboard of this world, to kind of fully progress into, you know, what will eventually be the conclusion. But like last week's episode, the stinger for this episode makes it feel like Hannah's going to be the culprit, the suspect. But once again, as we've seen, as you've seen in this episode, since you've watched it most likely, is that's not necessarily the case, because what this episode is basically about is how Hannah was confronted with a situation where she is in this world where it's very weird. Once again, this is a very Wes Anderson like archetype, it's a very Wes Anderson feel, where everything is like very colorful, very, you know, pastels, and like the camera angles are very kind of straightforward facing, and kind of the movements are like there's a lot of whip panning and stuff like that, which is that really quick move. There's just a lot of feel, like the music that's played, the way characters talk, the way characters act. It's very kind of stiff, but also very kind of goofy in a lot of respects. And you kind of watch it play out and watch it kind of progress, and then you realize what is happening is Hannah is an individual that became very infatuated with Grace because of Grace's mentality of how she truly kind of feels very left behind because of Edgar. Edgar's so committed to his cryptocurrency that he's never there for Grace. So it allows Grace and Hannah to develop this relationship, which becomes more of a love interest relationship that portrays almost like a summer fling in a lot of respects. And it goes into the emotions of Hannah and her kind of feelings about the world and about how she views this kind of sentimentality of like the weird macabre stuff and like the taxidermy stuff. But in the end of her character, her kind of overarching narrative is she's a very lonely individual. She's an individual that is so focused, like Max and Rushmore or any of these characters in a Wes Anderson story, with the trivial kind of, objectivity and stuff like that. Then when she becomes a truly romanticized character with Grace, it shows that she is just deeply kind of just lonely and sad. And that's what a lot of Wes Anderson characters do. And so we see her develop this relationship with Grace. And then it finally comes to a head where Grace is like, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to marry Edgar. Throughout the entire episode, it's basically what we saw with Travis's episode is that she's trying to get Grace back into her life so that they can run away and be together. So it's very much a kind of takedown of Grace or Hannah as an individual, and the fact that she wants something out of this relationship that she can't seem to have. She feels like Edgar is the wrong person for Grace, and that is just a very well put together, well introduced story element. It just really shows that Hannah may not be the person you think she is. She may come off weird, but in the end, she's just an individual that wants something out of her life to be whole. Yet something that comes into it feels, really at odds. And she tries to play off because Grace is going to marry Edgar. She hits on, of course, the Travis character, and Sebastian tries to hit on her. And she just really is just a very kind of sad, melancholy character who finally found someone who's actually being taken away from her. She doesn't like that. And she does something really interesting in this episode where she points out the flowers of the suspected flowers that end up killing, of course, Edgar, which she does that in front of everyone. So therefore, it could be anyone. It literally could be anyone at this point. So it opens up another, what is going to happen? Who's going to do it? Where is it going to play out? I just really love the idea of what Hannah is doing. I love the fact that, she fits in that weird stereotype that has real purpose. I love the fact that Danner really kind of roots for her and wants her to be happy. And it brings up a really funny thing where she hands Edgar the G key and says, I want to give this to you. He's like, why are you going to give this to me? He's like, well, you've always been kind to me. You always helped me out. I'm leaving. So that's the reason she was going to escape. She was going to try to escape with, of course, Grace. But Grace is, I guess, romanticizing with Edgar. And Edgar's kind of speech kind of brought out the fact that maybe it was not the right thing to, to take on Grace. So she decides she's going to leave. And, the really funny part about the whole key thing, Edgar, the Zach Woods character, was basically, he's confused why she's giving her the key. She explains it to him. He's like, well, you can't ever type anything with many, many words anymore. You can't type gentle, genteel, or, foreign, or fang, or something like that. It's really funny. It's the misunderstanding of what Edgar, in his logic, believes, because he's an individual who has a lizard on his shoulder, for one, and he's just he's a different individual when it comes to his mentality. So he doesn't understand her gesture of why she's given the G key, but he's more worried about why she can't spell certain things with certain letters now that he doesn't have the key. But it resolves the whole idea of what the G key was in his pocket for, which, it's a nice gesture, but it really shows that Hannah was really hoping that Grace would go with her. And it really makes her character sad, the idea that she's in the tub with the egg. Yeah, I love the idea of Isabel with the suit of armor. She's like, hey, did you order a suit of armor? And Hannah goes, no. He's like, Isabel goes, I guess that was me that ordered the suit of armor. I love armor on my skin. It's really funny. It could be a thing about, the idea of like the armor suit that's in Travis's episode, and maybe Isabel was hiding in armor. I don't know. It could be many things, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of the basis of Hannah's story. It just kind of proves that, maybe she wasn't, I mean, it's not saying that she couldn't have murdered and Grace and Hannah were going to run away, which is a theory I've had, but I also have this theory now that maybe nobody killed him, that he was killed by maybe the lizard spilled over the drink and he drank too much. That's always a possibility. I mean, I don't know, but like, there's that real possibility that maybe the lizard, I mean, I know that's far out there, but in the world of the Afterparty, the lizard could be the could be the killer. I don't know. So we'll see what happens with her, but it's really nice. I love the fact that, when Hannah explains to, Zoe that Grace and them were kind of a couple for a little bit, Zoe doesn't want to believe it, and so she goes and runs off, and then she has like kind of what they call whisper shouting, which is really funny. But the idea that, Zoe's like, why don't you tell me these things? Like, why are you so afraid? And like, they bring up the whole, relationship that kind of fell through with Zoe's character and stuff like that. And there's like a weird kind of chaos with Zoe and Grace, but I think there's kind of a very uniquely perspective of a relationship thing that they have to deal with. And just, I love the idea behind that. I love the uniqueness behind that and all that good stuff. So I really like the story development. I think the character development progresses a little higher. And, you know, there's always a possibility Zoe could be the killer. I mean, I hope that's not the reason. I hope that's not true. But, I mean, it's always possible. So, you know, also, I gotta bring up Ulysses. A really funny moment between Ulysses and Hannah and the arrow, which is very much a, you know, a trope of like, you know, Wes Anderson films and stuff like that. And then on top of everything, there's a running story arc in this episode with Sebastian where he borrows Fang because Fang speaks Korean, of course, you know, he's Korean. And basically there's a deal going through, and, you know, Fang being like the weird outsider that he is, he brings up this, like, you know, basically Sebastian needs to pull through this deal that's worth $5 million. And Fang says all this stuff during this episode, which is really funny. It just has nothing to do with the deal. And, you know, the guy on the other line is like, I'm really confused about what's happening. This is nonsense. But, you know, the deal goes through and so on and so forth. And then Fang's like, can we make like a proposition? Sebastian's like, sure, let me go. I'll be right back. Fang's like speaking about shaved ice and stuff like that. And then, but that's really, it's good stuff. It really is. It's pretty funny. But it basically leads to Anik kind of making this revelation about what the paper with all the names was on it, about the emails, stuff like that. And basically what we find out is Sebastian was fired by Edgar. For what reasons, we'll find out in the next episode, because it's Sebastian's episode. And basically what ends up happening is Sebastian has been, since the death of Edgar, has been trying to make deals since he knows he's been fired, but nobody else knows. And that he has been using Edgar's voice to basically play off that, you know, to make this deal. So there's some scheming behind the work. So maybe there was a thing that happened between Edgar and, of course, Sebastian that caused a lot of rift. And that's why Edgar's been gone for so long. So we'll find out in the next episode what really happened. But in that end, that's kind of where the episode ends. It ends with us going into the next episode, which will be Sebastian's episode. And I'm kind of curious, like, you know, I'm still not clear on who could have possibly murdered, you know, Edgar's character. You know, there's always that possibility that Edgar's not dead. He's still alive. And that's very much a clear possibility. And then there's, you know, the idea of Sebastian and, you know, what he's doing. And then there's Hannah and Grace. I mean, all these characters are still suspects. They have great stories, but even Ben Schwartz's character, his unique story did, you know, prove that once again that, you know, you don't know who the killer is. Like, it's very much well written and well produced and well directed. And it just shows that, you know, in the end, it could be anyone still at this point. It could be Isabella. I mean, we still haven't seen it. It could be Fang. I mean, it just, these characters they're giving such good motives and also as good, you know, good stories to how they could not be the killer or how they could be the killer. It just, that's the way this story is able to kind of justify and kind of position itself on the chessboard to being like very difficult to figure out, and it makes it for a super interesting storytelling aspect. It really does, and it really works. I hear even get into the last episode, before the last episode, like the penultimate episode, you still don't have an idea who it is, which is awesome. And that's the way it was last season. We didn't find out who the killer was to the last episode, which was, you know, made the story on the edge of your seat type of thing. So, but in that end, that's where this episode ends. It ends. It's great. It's if you love Wes Anderson, you'll love this episode. And it's still a 9.5 out of 10. I loved it. Found it fantastic. It's funny. It's energetic. It's not my favorite of the season. It's still Travis's episode, but I think Anna Konkle does a fantastic job showing off her skills as a comedian. So anyways, with that said, that's going to do it. That's going to be my take on this Afterparty Season 2, Episode 4, which is Hannah. Awesome episode. As well, you know, comments below. Let me know what you think of the episode. Do you think it's still a particular character? What do you think going in after leaving the episode? What is your overall thoughts from this point? But with that said, that'll do it. We'll see you on the next episode. But before we end, if you like this video, awesome. Hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.